Okay, let's kind of start on your back. And depending on how your hips are feeling, you can either come into Konasana legs, which is more intense for the inner thighs, or you can come into restorative pose with the knees together and the feet wide, which is much more relaxing. Taking a nice big breath in, releasing the breath, and closing your eyes. Spend a few moments connecting into our bodies, breath, and energy. Connecting into Ujjayi breath in and out through the nose. Creating a soft sighing sound on both inhale and exhale. And we're going to really focus on creating balance today. Balanced alignment. Balancing our breath and movement. And balancing our energy levels. So thinking of a weight scale where if you add too much weight to one side, it starts to tip. With too much weight to the other side, it'll tip the other direction. We're trying to balance those two spaces. On your next inhale, draw the knees together and then open the feet hip distance parallel. Bring your hands next to the hips and we'll work into some pelvic rock. So you lie with your back in a neutral position, slight arch under the lower back, and then you squeeze the glutes to flatten the lower back. On your inhale, relax into neutral. And exhale, squeezing down, flatten the back. And just flow with your own breath here. So we're not tilting the hip bones off the mat, but rather flattening the body against it. You've got to squeeze the glutes, squeeze the tummy to create this activated alignment. We're trying to start to bring our awareness into the glute muscles and into the hamstrings at the back of the body. Creating the natural arch and then flattening the back, squeezing the glutes. We're going to start to take this a little bit deeper now. So as you squeeze your glutes, you're going to now curl the tailbone and lift the hips slightly. Gently release back down into neutral spine. And then again, squeeze the glutes, lift the hips a little bit higher, but make sure you're squeezing all the time and gently releasing. Keep flowing with your breath here. We're not looking to hyperextend the back, so this is not a back bend, but rather a glute activation. So when you lift, you don't have to lift super high to get that glute activation. We're certainly not trying to lift so high that the back now comes into a bend. And in fact, you want to try and keep your body square and flat as you do this. So you lift your hips up, and then you imagine the floor underneath you, tucking the tailbone, flattening the lower back, and engaging into the quads, the hamstrings, and the glutes at the same time. Let's do this one more time, lifting up. And now lift your hips a little bit higher. Make sure again you're not arching into the back. You want a square hip, square thigh. Breathe into the space, squeeze your inner thighs together and really squeeze into those glutes. Take your fingers and press the side of your bum and make sure you can feel rock hard activation into those glutes. And then gently releasing down. Stretch your legs out in front of you, arms overhead, and take a nice deep stretch. Let's bring the hands back down next to the hips, rebend the knees, feet hip distance parallel. On your inhale, float your hips off the floor, squeeze the glutes, tuck the tailbone slightly, look for that flat activation of the back. Press your palms lightly into the floor and let's float one leg up to the sky. Square the hips and breathe into the space. You can roll your top ankle and change the direction of the roll. Let's rebend that knee, lift your hips slightly, and then come back down to the floor. Curling the lower back so that it rounds to the earth, and then just hold into your neutral space where the lower back is lightly arched. Let's take it into a second round. Flatten the back against the floor, lift the hips up, keep that flat activation of the lumbar spine, squeeze those glutes, and take your other leg up. Make sure you're squaring your hip. So if the hip lifts too high, you're losing your glute activation. Let's roll into that raised ankle. And then into the other way. Release your foot back to the floor. Lift the hips, squeeze those glutes evenly, and gently releasing back down. Take your knees into your chest. And rocking yourself to sit. You can rock a couple of times, rounding into the back. Slow, controlled movement. And all the way up to sit. Cross the ankles in front of you, and then stretching the glutes now by forward folding. Let's inhale to round the spine back up to lift. Float the hands overhead and twisting to one side. Inhale to center, float the arms up and twist to the other side. Inhale, returning to center, lift up tall and gently releasing down. Switch your legs around and forward fold. Let's roll the spine back up to sit. Inhale, hands overhead. And then leaning over to one side. Come back to center and over to the other side. And coming back to center. Let's roll over the hands and knees now to come into tabletop. Flow through a few rounds of cat-cow pose. And then drawing yourself into neutral spine. Lower the elbows to the floor and bring the palms to touch. We're now going to float the right leg up to the sky. And now tapping the toes from left side to right side. And lift the leg as high as you can. Squeeze that right glute as you do so. If you are lazy and you just let the leg flip from one side to the other, you're not going to feel the glute activation. If you make this hard, if you squeeze the glute, squeeze the hamstring, you're going to feel this quite intensely. So the reward is very much based on how much effort you put into this movement. Let's go one more time. Cross the leg over to the left side and then tuck your knees behind each other. Slide back into a eagle version of child's pose. Unwrap yourself, releasing elbows back down. And drop the knee to the floor. Let's now float the left leg up, and again we're tapping from side to side. And you want to get that leg high into the sky. Squeeze the glute, squeeze the thigh. Try not to let the lower back take the movement. If you're arching into the back, you're going to then defer away from the glute activation. Let's cross over to the right, tuck the knees one behind the other, and then slide back into your eagle version of child's pose. And gently releasing from here. Come back into tabletop. Tucking toes, lifting hips up and back. And then heel toe through the legs. Sinking both heels towards the mat. Let's look between the hands and take little steps up to the front into flat back. Exhale to forward fold, Uttanasana. Inhale, taking hands all the way up into Tadasana. Take a breath here. Inhale, hands overhead. And exhale to forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. And exhale to fold. Stepping right leg into lunge. And inhaling into plank. Let's lower knees, chest and chin. Keep the hips off the floor. Sliding into low cobra. And and back into downward facing dog. Inhale the right leg to the sky and stepping it forward into lunge. Inhale together, flat back, and exhale to fold. Inhale, hands overhead. And exhaling, hands to heart. Inhale, hands up. Exhale to fold. Inhale, halfway lift. And exhale to fold. Left leg lunge. Inhale. And stepping back into plank. Lower knees, chest, chin. And forward into cobra. Exhaling, Adho Mukha Svanasana, down dog. Inhale the left leg up and stepping it forward into lunge. Step together, flat back. And exhale to fold. Inhale, sweeping hands up. And exhaling, hands to heart. Inhale, chair pose. Sit heavy into your heels. Lift your toes slightly and engage into your quads. Squeeze your glutes. Now imagine you've got a block between the thighs and you're squeezing that block. You can even bring your fist, place your fist between your knees and squeeze your knees shut. But at the same time, try to push the knees apart. So you're working both inner and outer layer. Let's release the hands and then bring them back down to the mat. Lifting halfway up, flat back. And exhale, stepping the right leg into lunge. Float onto the fingers as you reach your head in one direction and your heel in the other. You're going to slowly drop the back knee down to the mat. Bring the hands to the front thigh. You want to make sure that your back knee is behind your hip, not underneath. You want a deep lunge into that back leg. And we're going to work into some pulses. So you pulse forward and you squeeze your back glute and relax. Exhale, pulse forward, squeeze. And relax. 3 more times. Squeeze that back glute and relax. If you're struggling to squeeze this back glute, that's often an indication that the glute is underpowered. And you're going to have to work quite hard at creating an activated glute. You may find that you are quad dominant. Your quads are taking the weight and your glutes are deferring. Let's come down, bring the hands to the floor, lift the back knee off the mat, and then step yourself into plank. Lowering knees, chest, chin. Sliding into cobra, and lifting up and back, downward facing dog. Let's walk, step or hop into flat back. And exhale to forward fold. Bending knees, raising the hands up. And now you're going to take your other fist, place it between the knees, and squeeze into those thighs. You can always bring your top hand to your hip if holding it overhead is not comfortable. Squeeze those glutes, squeeze the thighs, push the knees together and apart at the same time. Let's release the hand up and then forward fold. Halfway lift, flat back, and stepping the left leg into lunge. Floating on the fingers for a moment. And then slowly release the back knee down. Hands to the front thigh. And again, we're going to work into our glute pulses. So you slide forward, squeeze the glute, and then relax. Squeeze, 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 and relax. So we're not looking for hyperextension of the back here. So you don't have to lean all the way back in this pose. You can stay in a more neutral space and just work into activating the glutes and the hamstrings. One more time, and then we'll release the hands to the floor. Float the back knee up and step into plank. Let's lower knees, chest and chin. Sliding into cobra. Squeeze those glutes in your cobra. They should feel activated now. And back, downward facing dog. On your inhale, let's walk, step, or hop, flat back. And exhale to forward fold. Bending knees, sweeping the hands up. And now come onto the tips of your toes. Lift your heels high. Make sure you're balancing from big toe to baby toe. Let's draw the hands together and start to sit a little bit deeper. And a little bit deeper. Release heels and hands to the mat, forward folds, lifting halfway up, and then stepping your right leg into lunge. Squeeze your back thigh. Let's float up, high lunge. So again, reduce the arch into the back and lift the front body. Let's bring the hands onto the front thigh. Squeeze your back glute. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Slowly lower the back knee to almost touch. Almost touch. And then straighten up. Let's do that again. Almost touch. And lift up. One more time. Almost touch. And back up. Hands to the mat. Stepping yourself into plank. Lowering knees, chest, or chaturanga. Cobra or upward facing dog. Squeeze those glutes. And downward facing dog. On your inhale breath, take the right leg to the sky. Let's open the hip and bend into the knee, standing scorpion. Inhale to straighten the leg again and step the foot forward, warrior two. So warrior two pose is one of the postures where we become quad dominant. If you feel now that your front thigh is holding the weight and your back glute is doing nothing, and you can feel it by poking it, if it's all squishy, it's not doing anything. Once you engage that back glute, your spine straightens. The back leg takes 50% of the weight, and we are no longer quad dominant. See if you can even relax your front thigh a little bit and engage the back glute a bit more. Coming into reclining warrior. Parsvakonasana. Notice if you're still engaging that back glute. Becomes increasingly more challenging to engage the back glute as you tilt your weight forward. Maybe you want to lower the hand to the ankle or the mat and slide the hips in a bit deeper. Squeeze that back glute. Let's release both hands to the inside of the foot. Turn your front foot at a 45 degree and now come to sit in Skandasana. Engage through the back foot so the toes are facing the sky. Hands can stay on the floor or float to the heart. Let's release the hands down and then rotate over your front leg into lunge. On your inhale breath, step together, flat back. And exhale to forward fold. Bending knees, reaching hands up, Utkatasana. You'll feel that the right thigh is now a lot more pumped than the left. Try and balance. Let's bring hands together at the heart and come up onto the tips of the toes. Slowly sitting down. Come all the way down into toe balance. So now the heels come together, the knees open wider, and we sit our torso up tall. You can, of course, bring your hands to the floor if that's more appropriate for you. You can choose now to stay in toe balance, or if you'd like to try coming into Bakasana, into your crow pose, you'll bring the hands to the mat. Make sure your fingers are spread wide. Grip into the tips of the fingers so that the wrists are not taking undue amount of weight. Come up onto the toes, bend your elbows, and place your knees to the back of the upper arms. Start to tilt forward as you open up the chest. Maybe floating a toe, maybe floating two toes. Let's gently release yourself back down, coming into your forward fold again. So we're going to lift the hips, feet hip distance parallel, open the chest, and forward fold. Here you can even soften your body, soften your knees, maybe hold onto opposite elbows, and just take a moment to breathe. Let's engage, opening up the chest, hands to the mat, and stepping the left leg into lunge. Float up, high lunge. Square the hips here. So even in our high lunge, if you squeeze that back glute and you push the hips slightly forward, you're going to feel how the glute takes the weight and not your front quad. Bring the hands onto the front thigh, and we're going to slowly lower that back knee to almost touch. Almost. And then lift. Let's lower again. Almost. And lift. Last time. Almost. And lift. Bring your hands to the floor. Step back into plank, and you're going to choose knees, chest, or chaturanga, up dog, or cobra. Squeeze the glutes, and downward facing dog. Breathe into your down dog. If you'd like to come into child's pose for a few breaths, that is absolutely fine. Let's float the left leg to the sky. Open up your hip and bend into the top knee, standing scorpion. Inhale to straighten and then step the foot forward, warrior two. So check yourself now. Is that back glute activated or is it soft? Squeeze into that back glute, soften the front thigh, and notice how the spine becomes taller. Stay very aware of what's happening in your back glute as you come into reclining warrior. Feels more engaged in reclining because we're leaning back, and then coming forward into Parsva. You've got to focus a bit more in your Parsva to activate. You can release your hand to your ankle, block, or mat. Slide the hips a bit deeper and keep that back hip active. Let's release both hands to the floor. Turn the front foot at 45 and slide onto the front foot as you engage into the back leg, straight back leg, toes to the sky. Skandasana. Keep the hands on the mat or come into the balance. Let's release the hands down. You're going to rotate yourself over your front leg and make your way back into lunge and stepping back into plank. Let's knees, chest, chin, or chaturanga to the mat. Hands under the forehead and just take a few deep breaths. We're going to work into one final glute activating pose before we'll come into some stretches. So we're in our supine leg lift. You stay on the tummy. You can rest your forehead to your hands. You want to bring your feet more or less in line with the SI joint. So the heel lines up with the SI joint. Squeeze the glutes. Make sure the feet are straight. So the heels are pointing to the sky, not either side. You're going to lift one leg up and you're going to feel how the glute and the hamstring activates. You've got to be very careful here that you don't tip to the side and let the hip lift off the floor, because then you're no longer working the glutes. You'll lower it down and then switch to the other side. And again, don't let your hip lift off. So you're really activating the squareness of those hips. We're going to aim for about 5 or 6 lifts on each side at your own pace. Flow with your breath. One more on each side. And then let's take it back into a child's pose, which is a gentle glute stretch. yogi's choice for arm alignment. Relax the lower back, gently stretching the glutes and the quads. And then let's slide your hands forward, coming into downward facing dog. Walk, step or hop to sit on your mat. And bringing the hands out in front of you. So when it comes to lie down on your back, you might need a strap for these next few movements. So if you have a belt, a towel, a scarf, or a strap, that might be helpful. Otherwise, you can always just hold further down the leg if you don't have a prop with you. So when it comes to lie down on your back, bend your knees and take the right leg to the chest. So again, focus on balance. The spine is pressing evenly, the back is pressing evenly. Take your strap around the ball of your foot or hold your big toe. Straighten that leg straight up to the sky. So you want to get your knee straight here. If your hamstrings are very tight, you just work on straightening that leg. Nothing more today. Remember to keep the foot flat against an imaginary surface. If your knee is straight, you can start to draw the foot closer to the head, making sure that you're still engaging into that quad. We're stretching the whole back of the leg, including the glute. You can, of course, straighten your other leg on the floor as well, if that feels appropriate. And now left hand onto left hip. Push your left hip on the floor as you open your leg to the right. Find that balance. Do not let your left hip roll off the mat. Let's come to the center. Switch your hands around. Right arm out in a T shape. And draw the leg halfway across to the left side. You're going to feel how this pulls into the outer edge of the glute. So find a place that works for you. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, but wherever you're getting your best stretch. We'll take us into the full twist now by dropping the foot all the way over to the floor. It might not touch the floor, that's okay. You want to keep your opposite shoulder on the ground. So we're stretching ITB, glute, and hamstring in this alignment. Let's come back up to center. Re-bend your left leg if you straightened it, and now place the right foot into a figure of 4. Bending the knee out to the side. You can hold onto the left thigh, gently pulling the left thigh in as you push the right knee out. If you have the space, you can hold onto the left shin. Please make sure that your back and shoulders are on the mat and the neck is comfortable. If your chin is lifted off the floor, you need to tuck the chin back down towards the chest and lengthen the back of the neck. Keep your legs as they are, open the arms in a T shape, and then roll to the left, figure of 4 twist. So you stay in that figure of 4 alignment, the right knee lifting away from the body. The left knee drawing in. Let's return to the center now and release both legs down. Take both knees into the chest, balancing the spine. Right foot to the mat, bringing your strap around the ball of your left foot or holding your big toe. Take the leg up to the sky, and we're working on stretching that hamstring. So we're squeezing the muscles just above the knee. So this is the vastialis muscles or the quad muscles that join into the top of the knee. When you engage the quads, you have opportunity to stretch the hamstrings. You can straighten the right leg if you like. Right hand on the hip. Push your right hip down as you open your leg to the left side. If you find you're really tipping over, then re-bend the right leg. That'll give you more stability. Let's return to the center, switch the hands around, left arm in a T shape, and you're coming halfway to the right side. So find the space where your glute catches. And if you're doing this properly, your glute will catch. Again, if your leg is lazy, you're not going to engage and feel the depth of this pose. So you've got to activate. Let's come into the full twist now by dropping the leg as far over to the right as you can, while keeping the left shoulder on the floor. Let's lift back up to center. Rebend the right leg and coming into figure of 4. Just flatten out the back before you lift your right knee. Lightly flex into both feet. Maybe holding on to the shin if you want to go a bit deeper. And then coming into twist, opening the arms out and dropping both legs to the right. Keep pushing your top knee away as you pull your bottom knee in. And then returning to center. Unwrap the legs, hug the knees into the chest. Place both feet flat to the mat. One of the nice things about working into the glutes is that often we've now created space to lift into a back bend where we're really activating the bottom half of the body. So you're going to come into your half bridge pose, feet hip distance parallel, hands to the floor. And this is different to what we did at the beginning of the class where we were looking for a flat body. Now we're looking for the hyperextension. So when you lift your hips up, you want to arch into the back, drawing the shoulder blades close together. Maybe interlocking the fingers if you've got space. And really trying to lift your hips as high as possible. Your glutes and your quads are ready for this. So often this feels easier in the lower back. If you've got the space to lift into a wheel pose, you can place the hands under the shoulders and lift up. When you are ready to come down, you again curl the spine, so you're rounding into the lower back, and then take your knees into your chest. And come into a gentle massaging roll from side to side. Maybe even making little circles with the lower back. Remember to switch the circles for balance. Happy baby. And then making your way into a Shavasana. If you find that you prefer to hold into restorative pose, you can do that with pleasure. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose and sigh the breath out. The Shavasana today is well deserved. You've worked hard, activated into the body, pushed yourself, and now you can reap the benefits of your self-practice. Slowly start to deepen and lengthen your breath. Running your thumb over the tips of your fingers. Moving toes, ankles and wrists. Drawing the legs together as you reach your arms overhead, yawning. Sighing. Bending your knees and rolling onto your side in a fetal position. Inhale to lift into a comfortable seated space. Joining your hands together at your heart center in Anjali Mudra. And we'll close the class by chanting Om once and Shanti 3 times. Taking a deep breath in. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Raising your hands to your third eye. The light in me sees and honors the light in you. Lowering your hands to your lips, to your heart, to your mat, bowing forward in recognition of your practice. Blinking eyes open, inhaling to lift. Namaste.